So what I did, I thought, oh, fuck. So I screamed just as I got to the wall. I look up and I screamed to close my ear canals. And that's the shot in the movie. Is the guy going, ah! Because I was trying to close my ear canals. I didn't have any ear protection. That night, that's the shot. We did it. We finally got it. We go to dinner that night, and Vic Armstrong comes in. And he says, I want to show you something. He says, because I want to address this. You can't do roofing anymore. And he printed out my resume. And at that time, I'd done about 90 films, you know. And he said, this fellow here seems to be working quite a bit, you know. And he's worked with this person. And I looked at it and I said, yeah. He said, can we talk about you being a roofer? And I kind of looked at him and he said, when are you going to let go of that? When are you going to let go of that? Everyone sees you. It's okay, you know. And it was really cool because he was from a similar background. He came from a working class family. Their family had a horse, this big white old horse that somebody hired for a film. And the only one who could ride the horse was Vic. He was a young guy. And it had to go in, and in the film, they were shooting somewhere north of London. The horse had to come down a flight of stairs and go through this false window. And his dad said, my son Vic can do it. You know, so they hired the horse, this old bloody horse. They tied him on the horse. He went down and did it. And that's how he got into the film industry. You know, and he's now one of the world's leading stunt directors and second unit directors, Vic Armstrong. Look him up, he's a brilliant man. And so he says, when are you gonna let your past let go of it and embrace who you are and what you're doing? And that was the first time, that night was the first time that I allowed myself to sort of go, oh, I guess I'm not Mikey from the East End of Toronto, you know, who's actually Frederick Reginald Luther Ironside. They called me Mike.
That's a proper writer's name, that.
Frederick Reginald Luther
Yeah, that's a
Ironside.
writer's name, that.
Kind of right-wing though, right?
You call up on the legs, you
I
can't.
remember the first time I learned how to write Mike. I was so proud. I was like 4 or 5 years old. I came down, my mom was the second youngest of 18 children. They all had at least 5 kids. I had 97 first cousins on my mother's side. My dad had one brother, and he got killed right after Dieppe, you know, he was part of the Torres Scots. And I remember I came down and I was so proud. I wrote Mike. And they went, ah. And they looked at each other like, maybe we should tell him. And I swear to God, I remember this moment, like, what did I do wrong? And they said, well, your name's this. And I put down Fred. And I looked at it, and the F and the R looked so ugly, you know, it's like Mike looked. Fred was like, eh. They also told me that night was spelled with a K. And I remember laying on the floor going, I can't do this, I can't do this, you know. Slightly dramatic for a 4 or 5 year old. But yeah, I didn't know my name was Fred. I was named after my uncle Frederick Reginald Luther Lake. My mom and dad, I was born out of wedlock. My dad was not allowed to bury my mom. She was the second youngest of all these kids. Her father would not let my dad marry her. He ended up in a work camp in Northern Ontario. Nobody ever told me why. And I'd say, why was Dad in a bloody penal work camp? And they say, if you talk to your father. I said, yeah. And he said he was working for the Ontario Hydro. He said, okay, well, he was working for the Ontario Hydro. It's not the truth. I don't know what he did. Never told us. We never found out. But he came back and confronted my grandfather, my mom's father, and said, I want June. I want to marry her. And they got married. But evidently when I was born, my dad wasn't there. And it was in a Salvation Army hospital, and they used forceps on me, and my head looked like a peanut, you know. And my mom's mother had died the week before I was born, so she had a nervous breakdown. And her older sister, Jean, came out and said, June's had a baby boy, but she's out of her goddamn mind, because she wants to name him after Reg. That was her husband, Frederick Reginald Luther Lake. And they all went, oh, she's crazy, you know. And they all looked at me, and, you know, evidently they all showed up, all the brothers and sisters, and they said, well, he looks kind of like a Mike. And then one of her other sisters lost a child who was named David. So my uncle Bill said, yeah, I heard her mention David. You know, so they all signed the papers, Michael David Ironside. So I got a birth certificate, Michael David Ironside. My mom got her shit together, but 2.5 months later, she got out and came out as, she signed everything, Frederick Reginald Luther Ironside. 2 birth certificates. Do you know that Michael David Ironside can never drive in North America ever again? Fred has a perfect driving record. That's the absolute truth. Michael David did time for assault on a police officer. Fred's never been to jail. You guys have been great.
Everyone give it up for Michael. Thanks so much for your time.
God bless everybody. Have fun today.
Everyone smile. 1, 2, 3. You get it? All right. God bless everybody.